Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in and for watching Atlanta News First Plus. This stream here, we're checking in on the first alert forecast. Today is a first alert weather day. Windy conditions, we're talking gusts 40 to 50, so very windy weather. And in addition to that impact, also that risk of a few severe thunderstorms moving through North Georgia, in particular areas north of I-20, the mountains of North Georgia, far northwest Georgia, communities like Rome, Summerville and Chattooga County, up into Gilmer County, the Dalton, Georgia area, up into Chattanooga, Tennessee, 75 corridor, and then on eastward up into at least the western portions of the North Georgia mountains, maybe Helen, Ivy Log, Ellijay, you get closer to Rabun County, Clayton, maybe a little bit of a lesser risk of severe weather, but everyone does have that chance to be impacted by severe thunderstorms today. Before we dive too deeply into the forecast, I want to give folks just a few minutes to come into the stream before we give that really important hour-by-hour forecast and severe weather information. We'll start with the live look outside now. May not be a day that looks like it's going to contain severe weather. We have a lot of gloom, low clouds. Temperatures aren't that mild just yet. And breezes being kept in check. It's a little bit breezy, especially between the buildings downtown and midtown Atlanta, but conditions will change pretty quickly as we go through the next few hours. Another live look right now. This is Olympic Centennial Park, and you can see the flags are moving just a bit there. There is a breeze, but I wouldn't really call it breezy to windy just yet. Hour-by-hour forecast in just a moment. First, though, we'll take you to current conditions, and temperature is not all that warm. We're in the 60s and lower 70s. Only two spots on this particular graphic, unfortunately, reporting. That's Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport at 65. And one of the thermometers in the Clark County area, Athens, at 63. Though I do expect clouds to clear, winds to pick up, and that risk of severe thunderstorms to increase a bit, especially after lunchtime. So between noon and 2-3 p.m., the risk of isolated severe thunderstorms, meaning not every neighborhood sees severe weather, but that risk is there for a handful of storms to reach severe levels today. That will increase as we get into early afternoon. And about that same time, winds are going to increase as well. We have a wind advisory for pretty much the entire Atlanta News First viewing area, but this is a look at high wind warnings. Shaded in pink there, you can see for portions of Ellijay, just north of Dalton. This is Catoosa, Murray, Walker, and Whitfield counties. A high wind warning in effect until 11 p.m. Sustained winds 20 to 30, gusts up to 50, and would not be surprised if we actually saw a few wind gusts 50 to 55, even outside of thunderstorms. In severe thunderstorms, we could be talking about wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour. But a reminder, not everyone is going to see the severe conditions, but we want you to alert you to the possibility that that could certainly occur. And beyond the high wind warning, we do have a wind advisory in effect. I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit more visible to you. We're going to switch over colors here, and you can see the entire area, all of North Georgia, under a wind advisory. We'll click on that next, including Metro Atlanta, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, Muskogee. These are just a few of the counties, but anywhere in the Atlanta News First viewing area, if you're watching, wind gusts up to 40 miles an hour likely. I would expect, though, some higher wind gusts if we can get clearing here over the next couple of hours. So windy weather, a little sunnier weather, actually, some breaks in the clouds once we break out of this fog and drizzle. And then as that occurs, kind of secondary and just behind the arrival of the wind and some sunshine, that risk of severe weather will start to increase just a bit. All right, we have some comments coming in. We're streaming live. Roku, Amazon Fire, AtlantaNewsFirst.com, many places. Good morning to you, Michael Baxter, Wesley Millsap. Hello, checking in from Ackworth. I was up in your neighborhood yesterday, Ackworth, Southern Bartow, Northern Cherokee County, North Cobb County as well, as we were tracking the rain moving through yesterday morning. So different than yesterday. Yesterday we had the rain. We had a couple early morning storms. We had some breezy winds, but the setup really wasn't there to produce severe weather. Difference, though, today is that we do have many of the ingredients needed for severe thunderstorms to form. What we're waiting to see is just how strong storms can get. Can they get organized enough? Can those clouds get tall enough to tap into the conditions out there? The winds blowing very strong in different directions, at different heights, that rotation. Do those clouds become defined enough? Do the storms become defined enough to tap into the conditions that are fairly favorable for severe thunderstorms to form? So there are question marks on today's impacts. It's not a slam dunk, not a sure thing that we're going to see, widespread severe weather or anything like that. But what we can guarantee is that we'll warm up a bit. We're going to see some breaks in the clouds. It'll get breezy to windy as we get into the afternoon. And then we're going to be watching that potential for a few severe thunderstorms, especially north of I-20. If you live in Rome, Dalton over to Ellijay, on up into the mountains of North Georgia, most favored for the damaging wind gusts and isolated tornado and large hail. Again, we'll take you live outside right now. This is a look from Atlantic Station, the Atlantic building, one of the tallest in Atlantic Station, looking back across the connector towards Midtown and downtown Atlanta. We've had a little bit of rain move through today. This morning, nothing severe, but I do think that risk of severe weather will increase as we get into the afternoon. In fact, let's take you to radar. And we have kind of a wider view here. These are the showers moving through the Metro Atlanta area now, north and east of Metro Atlanta. Nothing severe here, but enough to wet the pavement. These are moving to the north and east. We have a few more showers developing along the state line, Troup, Heard counties, Carroll County, on up into Floyd County. These are moving north and east, so lunch hour and Metro Atlanta could feature more showers, probably will. But what we're watching for that risk of severe weather, as I clear the map now, is going to be this line of storms forming now in North Alabama, stretching down to west of Birmingham. It is this cluster of showers and thunderstorms that will have the potential to become more organized and the potential to tap into some ingredients that are more favorable for severe weather across Metro Atlanta, but especially the north side of town, especially on up 75, on up into far northwest Georgia. In fact, I can show you the severe weather outlook. This is today's risk of severe thunderstorms, and I think this kind of tells the story. In fact, we're seeing a bit of an adjustment here, but similar to what we were talking about earlier, it's the north side of town on up into the mountains of North Georgia, Rome, Ellijay, Canton, Gainesville, Rabun County, Clayton, Helen, Ivy Log, all of our North Georgia mountain communities. An enhanced 3 out of 5 risk of severe weather earlier this morning. They cut down that risk to about Canton, Ellijay, Rome included. This was the early morning outlook, kind of the northwestern 3rd or maybe 5th of Georgia, and they have now expanded that just a little bit further east to include Cherokee County, Canton, Gainesville, Hall County, up towards Toccoa Falls, Rabun County, Lumpkin County, Dahlonega, Gainesville, Towns County as well. All of these areas, kind of the northern 3rd or so of the state of Georgia, not just northwest Georgia, now with an enhanced risk of severe weather. Primary threat here, damaging wind gusts 70 to 75 miles per hour, but there could be isolated tornadoes as well. Austin Vance has a good question. Atlanta News First, the account to follow on YouTube, says, hey Cutter, do you think if the Storm Prediction Center would change from slight risk to marginal risk, do you think that it would still be a slight risk of severe thunderstorms? Day of, a lot of times leading up to the day of a risk of severe weather, you pay really close attention to the severe weather outlooks, the shadings, the colors, the levels of risk, Austin. But as we get into the day of, it's all about what is actually happening in the atmosphere. What are those soundings, those weather balloons that they put up in the atmosphere? What are they saying? What is actually happening outside? What does radar look like? And looking at all of those pieces to the puzzle today, kind of agreeing here, I don't expect too much of a downgrade at this point, but I will also say the greatest risk of a few severe thunderstorms that will become strong enough to produce wind gusts to 70, 75 miles per hour, quarter-sized hail, isolated tornadoes. That risk is greater north of Atlanta, from Rome, Floyd County, Chattooga County, on up into Gilmer County, Ellijay community, on into Helen, the Ivy Log area, Ellijay, Rabun County, and the Clayton community, Clay County, North Georgia mountains, and the North Carolina mountains. Those areas do have the greater risk for damaging straight line winds and possibly an embedded, I should say, isolated tornado. And you can see outside right now, it doesn't look too bad. It's gloomy, yes. It's cool, temperatures in the 60s, but it's not a high impact lunch hour across Metro Atlanta. That will change a little bit as we get into the afternoon. We're going to see the gloom fade a bit. We'll actually see the sunshine try to poke back out, Austin, and that will provide instability. Basically, when we crank just a little bit of heat into the atmosphere, we get those winds going, air will want to rise. And as that happens, the clouds will want to grow taller. Those showers and thunderstorms will want to become stronger and possibly organized enough to tap into some of the other ingredients across the area. The high winds we have howling just above our heads could be transported down to the surface, and also that risk of isolated tornadoes and some large hail. In fact, let's talk about the greatest risks. We've talked about location now, but risk by risk, it really looks like the risk of wind here is going to be the big threat. Sustained wind gusts or sustained winds with even higher wind gusts, 50 to 60, pretty common in these storms. But a few of these storms could produce wind gusts above 70 miles an hour. Risk of tornadoes, not as high as the risk of damaging straight line winds, but there is the risk of a couple isolated tornadoes, particularly up 75 into northwest Georgia, possibly into some of our North Georgia mountain communities east of the interstate as well. You know, it'll pour torrentially. It is. It's going to be a blinding rain, but it'll only last for about 30 to 45 minutes or so. So the risk of flooding rains is low, though I don't want you to think that it's not going to rain hard in a couple of places. It will rain torrentially wherever this line of storms is most organized. Again, particularly north and west of Metro Atlanta, but it'll be moving through so quickly that we're not too worried about the risk of substantial flooding. That is why that risk of heavy rain is a little bit lower. Okay, so here's the full hour-by-hour forecast now. Switching gears and running you through the hour-by-hour. Here we are at noon. Lots of clouds, maybe some breaks by then with isolated showers in the forecast. But watch what happens as we get into the afternoon. We're going to see the risk of severe weather start to increase as we get into early afternoon. See the first alert weather day logo up at the top by 2 p.m. Some of these storms, Chattooga County, Floyd County, they're getting close. Maybe not into your area just yet, but close enough to have your guard up. And then we'll watch storms gradually shift eastward. Here we are at 2 p.m. It's still fairly quiet Metro Atlanta. Breaks in the clouds, temperatures warming up by that point, and some breezy to windy weather unfolding across North Georgia. Let's take you deeper into the afternoon. It is this, again, this line of storms that we're going to be watching for the potential of severe weather to form. So we'll highlight that for you. Ellijay, Rome, at least Floyd County area, Bartow County in this case, Carrollton, early afternoon, 2-3 p.m., getting into mid-afternoon. We do have that risk of some thunderstorms becoming severe. You can almost see here, and I'm going to draw this on the map. Notice this little comma type shape in some of these storms, indicating that, yes, it's a line of storms, but they're wanting to rotate individually. So they move as a whole, but they behave on kind of an individual basis. And when we see that, and I do hope that that explanation makes sense, the risk of tornadoes and maybe some larger hail is greater with that type of storm behavior. Storms moving into Metro Atlanta, unfortunately, around the time of the evening commute. So we're going to need to watch this potential. How exactly do the storms unfold? How do they behave? And exactly what time do they enter the heart of the metro? I would say for the commuters, especially considering it's a Friday afternoon, a lot of you are trying to get out of the office 3:30, 4:30. You could be driving into these showers and thunderstorms, especially if you live on the north side, and any one of these could produce damaging wind gusts, large hail, isolated tornadoes, and torrential rain. May not last long, but that rain will be very heavy where it is raining at any one particular time. So moving on from 4 p.m., notice how quickly this line moves to the east. We'll backtrack it for you just a bit. Into Gainesville, DeKalb County, southeast side of town, Griffin down to LaGrange. You know, this model may not have the exact timing correct, but I think the window is right. So by 3 to 5 p.m., heart of the metro, and then after 4 or 5 p.m., starting to shift off to the east, and Clark County, Athens, Toccoa area, you know, east of Gainesville, maybe Madison, Georgia, getting into Washington County, Georgia, over towards Augusta. We're going to start to watch these storms impact your area. Down towards Eatonton, Putnam County, risk of severe weather is lower, but it also lingers a little bit later into the evening, even dinner time, 6, 7 p.m., Eatonton, Putnam County, Lake St. Clair and Oconee, that risk of a couple gusty thunderstorms moving through. And then we're done, even far southeastern areas by 7 p.m. Atlanta, we're long done. Rome, Ellijay, Canton, definitely better weather by then. They're still very windy across portions of North Georgia, Metro Atlanta as we get into the heart of the afternoon and then bleeding on into the early evening hours. Chatting on Facebook again, hello to you, Carlston. Say good morning, Atlanta News First Alert Weather. Cutter Martin, thanks for sharing the story. You're very welcome, Carson. Thank you for watching. Again, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the risk of severe weather and the likelihood that we're going to be dealing with some really gusty winds today. And I'm First Alert Meteorologist Cutter Martin. You're watching Atlanta News First Plus. We're streaming the forecast for you, even outside of news time, just to make sure you are well aware what's going on. You have all the resources you need to stay alert during the afternoon and the evening hours as these storms roll through, and to just answer any questions that you may have. You know, that's the really cool thing about Atlanta News First Plus. Yes, we can give you the forecast on TV and in the app, but unfortunately that's more of a one-way conversation, you know, just to you. But in Atlanta News First Plus, we can chat, we can converse. You ask me a question, I will hopefully give you an answer that is good enough to help you plan and adjust those plans if needed. Checking in on Facebook and on YouTube. Austin Vance asked that really good question earlier. Do we think that the risk of severe weather may lessen? They may peel that back, and it's not looking like that at this point. But I will say that this is not a day where everyone is dealing with severe wind gusts. Not everyone is dealing with, you know, risk of tornadoes. But the ingredients are there for a handful of these storms that we see today to start to spin and to become strong to severe, producing damaging wind gusts, isolated tornadoes, large hail, And for a short amount of time, it will rain torrentially. We're talking springtime downpours here along with that wind and possibly some hail. Max says he's keeping an eye on the forecast all day long. You know, that's a really good resource, good thing to do, and a reminder that the First Alert Weather app is a really good tool to have. And if you have any weather questions, comments, concerns, First Alert Weather app can really address the risk or the concern there. Again, first alert today to windy weather, severe storm risk. Today is a first alert weather day. Basically the entire day, you need to keep your guard a little bit more elevated, at least now through 6 or 7 p.m. as we track these storms moving through North Georgia during the afternoon and the early evening hours. Again, outside right now, if you're just tuning in, not too bad. It looks gloomy. Lots of clouds. Temperature is kind of cool outside. But in reality, it's fairly calm right now. That's going to change as we get into the afternoon. We're going to be watching that potential for isolated tornadoes, damaging wind gusts, and brief heavy rain across the area. But really, it's the severe weather risk along with the gusty winds that everyone is going to be impacted by. That's what we're going to be watching as we get into the afternoon. Max Goop saying the calm before the storm. And again, we're chatting on Facebook, Atlanta News First, the account to like and follow if you want to be a part of this conversation, if you have any weather questions that may need to be answered. And Max is also on YouTube right now. Again, we are tracking the risk of severe weather increasing as we get into the afternoon, especially north of the immediate metro. So good morning. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Cutter Martin. First Alert weather day today. Widespread windy weather, wind advisory, all of metro Atlanta, with a greater risk of severe weather on the north side of town, Canton, Cherokee County, up into Dahlonega, Gainesville, Hall County, if you live in and around, Forsyth County, Cumming, Lake Lanier area. Krista Goto saying keep an eye on the forecast, hopefully no severe weather. And Krista is commenting in from Gordon County. Krista, thank you for those kind words. Again, if you have any weather questions, comments, concerns, Krista Goto or anyone else, feel free to give me a holler right here. Atlanta News First Plus. We're streaming on Facebook right now. That's a place you can chat. Also streaming live on YouTube at the moment, and haven't noticed any new comments coming in too soon within the past few minutes. In fact, let's take you back to the forecast now. We'll bring you live to some of the latest data. No huge changes in the overall thinking, but what I will say is that there has been an adjustment to the risk of severe weather today. They have expanded that enhanced risk of severe weather, and we have the bigger picture first for you. Mountains of North Georgia in particular, because of that risk of damaging to destructive straight line wind gusts, 60, 70, 75 miles per hour with the strongest storms today. And then all of North Georgia, as you can see, is under at least a slight risk of severe weather. That yellow shading level 2 out of 5. So let's take a tighter look in here, get our counties to pop on. I'm going to drop this banner so you can see it more clearly. Notice if you live in LaGrange and in Carrollton, yes, you do have a risk of severe weather, but it's not the greatest risk. Now, that doesn't mean you need to let your guard down. That doesn't mean you won't see severe weather, but if we have to highlight certain areas that are at greatest risk, where you really need to pay the most attention to the weather today, that's going to be communities like Rome, Canton, Cartersville, Ellijay, Gainesville, Clayton, Georgia, up in Rabun County, Helen, Ivy Log, Ellijay, Toccoa, getting up towards Dalton. That 75 corridor between Dalton and Chattanooga, Tennessee is a place to watch. Northern portions of Cleburne County and Alabama on up into Huntsville. If you have a weekend trip planned in Huntsville, or maybe you work in Atlanta and you live in the Huntsville area, or you do that long work week commute and you're driving back to Huntsville this afternoon, this evening, you will be impacted by strong to severe thunderstorms moving in from the west and from the northwest. But keep in mind, even LaGrange, even Griffin, even McDonough, even Eatonton, Lake St. Clair, Oconee, even over to Athens, over towards Augusta, at least, a 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. Severe weather not quite as likely, it may not be quite as widespread in those yellow shaded areas, level 2 out of 5 risk, but that is a possibility even in your area, even in your community, that you could be impacted by some severe wind gusts, isolated tornadoes. Bobby Hobbs Krennick, apologize for that. Betty, not Bobby, Betty Krennick Thanks for watching. Anytime you have a northern front and a southern front moving into an area together, volatile weather will result. When there is a green tint to the sky, it is a sign of hail or tornado risk. You know, those are general rules, and definitely we have the southerly flow at the surface. We have more of a westerly flow up above our heads, and that spin is going to help storms rotate, at least try to do so, Betty. So kind of hitting the nail on the head there. And you know, green sky can mean that. Green sky is more of a symptom of the hail and the sun angle and stuff like that, as well as what else is blowing around the atmosphere. So that's kind of a symptom of the hail, lots of it in that case, reflecting and refracting that light, kind of giving a green, there we go, a green tint to the sky. So just a heads up, yes, that's one thing you could look for. Again, Betty's advice on Facebook, but don't pay attention to just those elements. A lot of times that you can have severe weather, you can have tornadoes, even without that kind of hint visually to the green that's in the sky and the severe weather risks that may be approaching from the west. So again, only 11 a.m. update. It's really substantial or notable to you is the fact that they have expanded that enhanced risk of severe weather to include all of the North Georgia mountains, North Metro, Rome, Canton, Gainesville, City of Atlanta on south and east. Yes, it's a lesser risk, but it is not zero. It's still worthy of your attention. Still need to be aware of the possibility of some severe weather today for pretty much all of North Georgia. I want to thank you for watching, for checking in. Atlanta News First Plus, the First Alert weather app, is a great tool to have. In fact, I have it on my phone. We were using it yesterday morning, and you could see an alert sent by the First Alert weather team just a few moments ago. ANF Plus, that's the last alert I got just a few minutes ago. The tornado threat this afternoon has increased across North Georgia and Metro Atlanta, especially the far north side on up into the mountains, hence that adjustment of the enhanced risk. We're here to answer your questions. We'll keep you updated all day long. Atlanta News First Plus. You can stream it, atlantanewsfirst.com, News app, weather app, Roku device, Amazon Fire, and if a tornado warning is issued anywhere in the Atlanta News First viewing area, we'll stream it live, not just digitally, but also on TV. Again, we'll keep you updated. Here's a calmer look at the city of Atlanta. Starting to get shaky as the winds increase. Our elevated camera is. Full check of the forecast coming up again on the news at noon in about 30 minutes.